So can you just let us know who you are and what your background is briefly?
Sure. I'm Commissioner Connie Galambos Malloy. I'm Director of Programs at Urban Habitat, which is a regional environmental justice organization here in the Bay Area.
I'm Vincent Barabba. I'm retired, supposedly, but as my wife says, I failed retirement. And but I was the former director of the Census Bureau in 1980, and I've worked at several large corporations in the market research and consumer information.
Was it the Census Bureau just for the district or the entire?
It was for the United States.
Yes. Census. Okay, so you do have some government experience.
I have some government experience, yes.
Okay, so and one of you is a Republican, one of you is a Democrat. Am I right?
No.
You want to decline to guess?
One of us is declined to state.
Oh, one of you is a decline to state.
Yeah, and that's Connie.
Okay, and you don't want to state now, I'm sure.
No.
You're going to decline again. Okay, so the first question I have is, and I'm very curious about this. What are the criteria for making these districts? How are you going to do it? Because as we've seen and we've been told, they call these districts, what is the word they used to call it?
Gerrymandered.
Well, it's gerrymandered. They were very oddly shaped districts, yes. And they were done that way for political purposes, to ostensibly to ensure the re-election of certain legislators, and now California has said we don't want to do it that way anymore. We want a different set of criteria. So what are those criteria?
Sure. Well, one thing to keep in mind is that our commission is explicitly prohibited from taking into consideration parties, incumbents, candidates, so they're really trying to take the politics out of the process of redistricting. There are a number of different criteria that we have to weigh. First and foremost is compliance with the U.S. Constitution and ensuring that each person really has one vote, so the districts have to be of equal size for the same type of districts. We also have to comply with the Voting Rights Act and ensure that racial and language minorities have the ability to elect representatives of their choice. To the extent that it is possible, we are to respect the existing boundaries of cities, of counties, of neighborhoods, and communities of interests. Vince, help me out here. I'm thinking, am I missing anything?
Well, and compactness.
Compactness.
To avoid this stretched out all over the state kind of districts.
The districts must be contiguous, so we can't have part of a district up here and part of a district up here. They have to be attached to each other.
Right.
And then there's a way in which the different types of districts relate to each other. So for every 2 assembly districts, they equal 1 Senate district, and every 10 Senate districts fit inside a Board of Equalization district.
Well, that's...
To the extent to which you could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you talk about communities of interest, what does that mean?
Well, that's one of the things we're working on right now, because it's not very explicit in the law. But we're going into a very extensive outreach program, actually starting next Saturday in Reading. And we're going to go out and ask people to describe to us what they think their community of interest are. And we will have our technical group with us, and we will actually record what people have said they think a community of interest is. And we'll capture all that information, and we'll try to bring that together as an additional part of the database on which we have to draw the districts.
Interesting. So right now you're not sure what that means.
Well, it means a lot of things to a lot of people, and it's not the law was not written. It just says consider communities of interest.
The community of interest, the broad definition we have to work with is that it's a geographically contiguous area that shares common social and economic interests. So in many ways that you could define that.
Yeah.
It could be coastal, it could be agricultural, it could be industrial. So it will be really interesting for us as commissioners to go out and hear from the local communities how they would define themselves.
Interesting.
So I'm from Santa Cruz County, you live in Capitola, but that whole area has got a community of interest. It's called Monterey Bay. And then if you look at the water districts that are associated with that, that could also be considered a community of interest, because you have to consider water for residential life, for farming, and then you have to worry about saltwater intrusion and on the water table. All those things have to be brought together.
And the important thing, I think, for community members to think about when they come to our input hearings is that their community of interest ideally should be mappable. And so they should say, you know, my community of interest is X, the reasons for that are why, and it starts on this certain street and ends on this certain street, because really, fundamentally, our job is to make maps, and so we've got to be able to have a geographic boundary for any given community of interest.
Good. Are you guys getting paid for this?
Yes, we get,
It sounds like a lot of work.
we get paid $300 a day for when we're working, and that sometimes is a 12-hour day, but we can still get paid $300.
Okay, sounds like a good deal, actually. Not for you, for us. Okay, and last question is, why take this on? What compelled you to actually apply? I mean, you actually went through a long process. Who ultimately picked you guys as commissioners?
It was a multi-layered process that began at the Bureau of State Audits with upwards of 30,000 applications. They vetted those candidates down, and a final pool of 60 went to the legislature. There were 20 Republicans, 20 Democrats, and 20 declined to states. The legislature struck, I think, about 24 people from that final pool. They did a lottery from that final pool for the first 8 of us, and then the first 8 of us, of which Vince and I were part of that first 8, we sat down with the rest of the finalist applications and chose the remainder of the last 6 commissioners who joined us.
And so in that process, nobody could point at any one person and said, somebody influenced the decision to bring you to the commission. Mm-hmm. It's virtually impossible for anybody to point out how somebody was selected because of a vested interest.
Right. And what compelled you to actually apply?
Well, I mean, I think as a citizen, not wearing my commissioner hat, I share the sentiment that many of us do, that I feel like business as usual is just not working in Sacramento. And so this really seems like one of the potential reforms that could have a big impact in how politics are run in our state. And so it was just a unique opportunity to bring my background as an urban planner to bear on redistricting.
In my case, I had a real familiarity with the data that we will be using, having been a former census director, and then having provided information and made decisions in the private sector. And I thought that it would be an opportunity to make use of a very important piece of data, but to do it in a meaningful way.
Okay. And last question, could you put all the Giants fans in one district? Is that possible? No one's going to watch it.
Come to our input hearing and show it on a map.
It's definitely a community of interest.
Yes, it is. And if they were, if you could demonstrate that and give us a map that showed it, and it would fit all the other conditions we have to deal with, certainly would be considered.
We hope to see a lot of fans at our hearings coming up.
Okay, we'll work on it. Okay, well, thank you very much, commissioners. Really appreciate it.
It was our
Our
pleasure.
pleasure.
Okay, take care.